fellow book lovers. Today I'm going to be talking about Experimental Film by Gemma Files. This is my first book I've ever read by Gemma Files. I did not know what to think. I think I saw this on a Book Riot newsletter. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure that's where I saw it. And so I decided to give it a try. I did borrow it from my library. Can I say enough how much I love libraries? I mean, I work for one, so a little bit biased, but come on, free books. Do you know how much I read? A lot. The answer is just a lot. And I definitely save by using my library. So I'm just saying, if you haven't tried yours, please try yours, especially if you love books. I mean, yes, if you read it and you really love it, you can buy it. That's what I do. When I feel really passionately about a book, I buy it. But you know what? If you're ambivalent about it, you didn't spend that money and you can just move on with your lives. So how did I feel about Experimental Film? I liked it. I did like it. Yeah. I had semi-mixed feelings, but no, I think I liked it. No, I'm sure I liked it. I think I liked it. Let me tell you why. So this tells the story of a film history teacher, Lois. And at the beginning of the book, Lois is kind of going through a difficult time. She is currently jobless, and in the same time that she loses her job, her son is diagnosed with autism. And so Lois is kind of trying to cope with her new reality. She always knew that her son was a little different, but now she has a clear diagnosis. And I don't want to just put that on there, because it's not like she's a bad person, but having to not only cope with the fact that her son now has these special needs that she will have to deal with in her life, but also now that he has autism, there's the whole outside influence and impact. So whether that's people judging her, like, how did your son end up with autism, which is so dumb, but people are that way. But being like, that, or, of course he has autism because you're weird and your husband's weird, just all these like outside things, but also from her mother, like that Lois needs to be doing more of this or that in order to be a proper mother to her son. I just, yeah, you see that impact and those feelings within Lois, and she's not a perfect character. She's not a perfect person, who is. So there are times when you're kind of like, oh my gosh, just why? Your thoughts are upsetting. Like, there are things that she admits that she will have said to Clark, who's her son, that you're just kind of, oh, it's so harsh. You're like, how could you say that to him? But it's her means of coping. Moving on. So, obviously Lois is at kind of this dark point in her life, and she is suffering from depression because of it, and she's looking for what to do next and a way out of her current situation. And somehow along the way, this is where I get kind of confused as to the events of what happened when. I know that there is this series of folklore and stories that are told that somehow tie to this woman who in the early 19th century vanished. She vanished and her son vanished. And I remember that the tales tie back to her, but I can't remember how they tied to her. But somehow Lois discovers how that tied to her. And then when Lois is at a film screening, she is watching this one film that had found film footage in it. And she notices that the story within the found film footage matches the story that was in the folklore fairy tale, dark fairy tale-esque stories. And so she wants to find a way to link them together because she believes that Mrs. Whitcomb, the woman who disappeared ages ago, is both the author of those stories and the, I guess, director of the movie, found movie bits. And she wants to find a way to prove that. And she ends up getting a grant, and she's going to pursue that quest for connecting the items together, especially just linking Mrs. Whitcomb to the videos, because that would make her one of Canada's first female filmmakers. So she wants to find that link. And that's essentially what the main story is her on her quest to discover the past of Mrs. Whitcomb. However, because of those creepy dark fairy tales, you do get the feeling that there is something dark and sinister going on, not to mention the fact that Mrs. Whitcomb and her son disappeared. And Lois is drawn to Mrs. Whitcomb because her story kind of parallels Lois's own. Her son was different. That was pretty much the only way that they said it. Her son was a little odd and different. And it's probably because back in the early 19th century, they would not have done an autism diagnosis, but it's believed that he probably had autism too. And so she does feel this kind of connection to Mrs. Whitcomb and like what was she going through. But also just from a Canadian standpoint, she wants to have this piece of film history. And that's actually one of the aspects of the book that I really appreciated, is that Canadian filmmaking is sort of brought to the front. And it's even talked about how it's kind of overlooked, especially English-speaking Canadian filmmaking. American filmmaking is so major and so huge, and the Quebecois filmmaking, which is usually French language, is respected. But then the English language Canadian filmmaking is kind of at a B rank level. Like nobody really thinks about it. It's not really respected as a foreign film. And I just loved hearing that little tidbit there. It's fascinating. I love film history and I like history in general. And getting to see like that idea or the representation of like, what is it like for Canada, which is a great country, but so overlooked in so many angles that was so fascinating. I was like, yes, because when you think about it, like name a Canadian film. I mean, if you're Canadian, maybe you immediately know one, but most people will immediately think of American films or they'll think of, foreign films. But if you say like Canadian film, it's like, I don't know. It's just not talked about. And so I really liked that. I appreciated that whole aspect, and that kind of drew me into the story because I was like, oh, that's cool. I like hearing this. It's interesting. So now to get into the darker aspects. So we know that there were these set of dark, twisty kind of fairy tales, and somehow this related to Mrs. Whitcomb, especially since that seemed to be the topic of these films that she filmed or had filmed. And you want to uncover the mystery about why was she obsessed with this story, and specifically the story of Lady Midday. Why was she obsessed with it and what happened? But as Lois begins to investigate, dark things start happening to her and around her. She starts seeing and feeling things. And you begin to wonder at the very first whether that's really happening or is it due to Lois's depression? Is it just psychological? And I won't give away whether it's really happening or what the resolution is because I want you to discover it on your own if you are at all interested in this book. I don't want to spoil it, but it is fascinating. It gets a little creepy. Stuff starts happening to and with Clark as well. So you kind of fear for the child. And of course, if you're like me, you don't like things happening to kids and you want to have them be safe, but it adds this element and layer to the book that improves it. And I really liked it. You do also get to meet, there's a couple more characters that you get to meet, but I will say specifically because I saw comments on this, you do get to meet Lois's husband. She is married. She has a very supportive husband. A lot of people were saying that he was too boring and too perfect, but I really liked him. You know, she says from the get-go that she's very lucky to have him in her life. And she often describes him as like I don't remember if she said the perfect Catholic boy or the good Catholic boy, but she often like describes him that way. And he's very like open and loving. And he can deal with and put up with Lois's issues. And even at points where she wants to do things that are kind of reckless and crazy, he does allow it. I mean, he does say, I don't think you should be doing this, but at the same time, he does allow it. And he actually goes along with her in order to help keep her safe. So I don't know. I get that some people were like, no, he's too boring and perfect and cookie cutter, but I'm going to say there are people like this in the world. I get that a lot of people want all like characters that are damaged and whatever, and probably even in his case, he probably had damage, but there are people who are genuinely supportive and good people. So don't knock all characters that are like that, because yeah, some people are kind of just boring, supportive people that are kind and will allow you to do what you need to do and will take care of the work at home. So I don't like it when people totally crap on characters like that. They do exist in real life. And I'll say again, it's not like he was completely perfect and letting her do whatever. They did have arguments where he was like, are you kidding me? I don't think you should do this. So I'm just laying it out there. One of the things I did like was Lois's development and her, for lack of a better word, acceptance of her son's autism. As I said, she does reflect back on like some of the negative things that she would say to Clark, and you know, she does carry this guilt about it. Like she realizes by the end about how wrong that was, and it's not the way that she feels about him. And so you do believe she's going to switch that from now on, that her perception begins to change. And I do like that. I like seeing that, because it's not so much a trial to have her son. Her son is her son, and she's going to love him and accept him and have him as her son, and that he's special, just the way that he is. And I liked seeing that development that does occur throughout the book. And I thought that was good to see and reflect. So I guess the only negative for me is that there were times when I was reading the book where I just would drift away from paying attention to the book. And it's not like it was terrible, or anything like really boring was happening. I just felt, I would feel a disconnect at times where it was like, I don't really know what's going on, and I just would rather think other thoughts. That may not happen to you. It might have been just a me thing. You know, sometimes we all get a little tired and don't want to pay attention to whatever we're trying to struggle through. But then again, if something feels almost like a chore to us, is that a positive? I don't know. But sometimes it's just we're going through a thing and it's not really the book's fault. I don't know. But I definitely noticed it. I definitely noticed that I would just be like spacing. And then I'd be like, wait, what just happened? And that's probably why I can't remember how Mrs. Whitcomb tied to the books. I know that she did. Nobody else seems to be mentioning this on any of the reviews, because I was like, could somebody just remind me how she connected? I don't really want to go back to that part of the book. I have to return it. Could somebody just say how she connected? I I feel like there was like a name thing. Like it was written under a different name, but Lois was able to connect the name to Mrs. Whitcomb. If that's right, you can let me know in the comments. I think that's what it was. But I do think that maybe I drifted during that part and I have forgotten how she connected. So for me, this book was maybe 3.5 stars. I don't think it was as low as 3 stars, but I also don't think it was as high as 4 stars. But that was just for me. You might like it and think it's a 5-star read. There were some spooky spots that I liked. Oh, the other thing I did not like is that when something big was about to happen, we often didn't see it happen. It would like black out and jump to a later time and then be kind of told backward, especially at the very end. There are scenes like that, like something major was going to happen and then it cuts to like some other time and then you get taken back to that. And I just found that frustrating because there's one point where I was like, all right, we're going to go for the attack. We're going to do this. And then it like cuts to this whole other scene. And I was like, you mean we're not going to get to see that whole part? And it was told back to us, but I kind of would have liked that present, like keeping in that present narrative to have played out. And maybe that's why it's a 3.5, because I didn't like how it would do that. I wanted to stay like in that action with the character. I like that we got to see it, but I kind of wanted to do that when it was happening and not later. So there you go. Can't believe I almost forgot that. Then I was like, that was what it was. That was what it was that drove me crazy. I don't like that. I like to stay in the narrative and in the action. I mean, occasionally it's fine. Like if you know, if you're in the action and then say your main character gets knocked out, well then of course, you know, people are going to fill in the character later. But if that's not where the cut hits, it can sometimes take me out of that. Like I want to see those events. I want to see what happened. Yeah. That happens in this book. So if you're not into that, you might struggle with bits of it like I did. That's it for this video. I will see you next time.